My name is Kit.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Streaming Things, a show that talks about TV shows and movies frequently, weekly, multiple times weekly. You know it, you love it, unless you don't. In that case, welcome. Today, we're talking about a very special movie requested by a very special person.
Very special boy.
Who's a patron of our show, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Thank you so much for choosing this movie. This is a very popular movie. This is a movie that I saw back in 2014. I almost said 2014.
The year of our Lord, 2014. The second age.
I liked it, but I didn't view it as remarkable at the time. I gave it a very high score on Letterboxd of 4 stars and proceeded to not think about it very much again. Fast forward to the last few years, I've been chronically online, even more than usual, talking about movies every day with movie lovers around the world and discovering, to my surprise, that this movie is extremely popular, well-loved among the younger crowd of cinephiles, considered the apex of erudite lovers of moving pictures. And that movie.
I love all the words you just said. You went from erudite to lovers of moving pictures.
That movie
Love
is Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. And it's fun to revisit. I was really excited because I've been meaning to rewatch it. Because, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, that particular experience of blah, 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 blah. Oh, what a good movie. Never think about it again.
Oh, all the time.
Walk into a room. Oh, dude, one of the best ever. And you think, is it?
Did we watch the same movie?
I'm not disagreeing with you because I don't actually remember much of it, but that's kind of why I'm disagreeing with you is because I don't remember much of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was my experience of Interstellar. So what a delight to finally be forced to revisit it. And I am excited to deliver my thoughts on where I land in this whole debate. Steve, I think you had a similar experience. You've seen the movie, hadn't thought about it much.
Yeah.
You are not as chronically online, so you might not know the fervent love that there is for this movie, or maybe you do.
No, I was unaware that there was like some fervent love for this specific movie, Interstellar. I just assumed because
part of the Nolan fanboys.
Christopher Nolan is so hot right now. Like everyone loves Nolan films, and so I just assumed Nolan made this movie. People, cinephiles, fucking probably film bros are doing that on the reg. You know what I'm saying? And so, but yes, to your point. In 2014, I sat down, watched this. I remember liking it a lot at the time, but I never watched it again. I would think about it sometimes because there are some pretty heavy moments in this movie. I would think about man, that was really, really good. But sitting down and getting to watch it again was a huge, huge, huge joy. But also, side note, just whenever I looked up this movie, it came out in 2014. That was just a couple of oh my God, it's 10 years ago. Yeah. God damn it.
Yeah.
Time really is a bastard.
You worked at the movie theater.
When this came out, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I worked this movie. Yep. Are we doing overall thoughts already?
Yeah, I want you to tell me your overall thoughts on Interstellar, and then we'll do a play-by-play, scene-by-scene recap of this gargantuan movie, Interstellar. What'd you think, Steve?
No pun intended on the gargantuan black hole.
No, actually it was not intended.
No, so this movie, man, I love this movie. I absolutely adore this movie. I think I rated it 4.5 stars on LBXD. And this movie impresses me on so many levels. I think, and this might be controversial, I might get some people getting in the comments after me on this statement, but I think this is the last Christopher Nolan movie that I genuinely love. All of his movies since then I think are good, but I don't really care about them after I see them for the first time. Tenet's obtuse and kind of fun. Dunkirk isn't my jam. Dunkirk came after this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Dunkirk's not really my jam. And because I think Nolan really kind of leans into this, isn't time something we can play with in film? And I think it works sometimes, and I think it doesn't work in others. I don't think it works at all in Dunkirk, but I'm in the minority of that one. But I think this movie specifically, he's working with time, but in a way that makes sense to the story. For instance, Oppenheimer comes out this year, and he's playing with the time and how things are edited. in that movie. And I don't think it's necessary in that specific movie. It doesn't really hit me in a way. Whereas this movie, he's just, here's a movie, we're playing with time. It's pretty straightforward. This is a pretty straightforward edit for a Nolan film.
Sure.
And I really, really appreciate that. And I also think this is brilliantly written. It's one of the best, like, you can really get in the weeds with the writing, the editing, and the production design in this movie, because literally everything that happens, every single thing in the background means something. It comes back in some way, and it's very profound. And one of the things I really, and we'll get more into that when we do our scene-by-scene breakdown to be specific in what I mean, but another thing that I really, really appreciate about this movie is it is a sci-fi epic. You will be hard-pressed to find a movie that sci-fi's this hard. This is hard sci-fi. It's big. It's grandiose. The special effects are there. You know, it kicks so many sci-fi films out of the water in terms of what it's saying about time, relativity, all that stuff. But what makes the movie work and what elevates it to a movie that is just in the stratosphere, what makes this movie interstellar, if I may, is that all the sci-fi, as great as it is just window dressing for this incredibly profound story about a father giving up time with his children and the tragedy that is. He's got to go save the world and giving up time, literally giving up time with his kids. And that, the fact that the movie is centered around that core idea, that core story, that's where all the emotional heft, the emotional weight. I'm a bawling mess, like probably a fourth of this movie. And I don't even have kids, but I'm bawling my eyes out because it hits me that hard as a 36-year-old man. And I can't say enough how much I just absolutely adore and love this movie because of how personal it feels. And I know there are like a lot of cynical people online who are like, oh my God, love is the answer. And I understand where they're coming from. It is a little, in terms of Nolan, like if you're looking at the Nolan genre of films, this probably is the cheesiest. But I think I think it works in the context of the story. Like there's a anecdote by Brand halfway through the movie where she's talking about how love is unquantifiable, but it's something that does, other than gravity, it's the only other thing that transcends time, space, all that stuff, and that's so uniquely human. And because they lean into that, and that's part of the quantifiable answer to this, all these, huge physics stuff that they're talking about with time and relativity, I think that works. And because the movie is centered around this relationship between a father and daughter, it just all comes around and it's packaged so perfectly together. And that's why I really appreciate the love and care, no pun intended, that Nolan put into this movie specifically. You can see it on screen. And that's why I think this is one of my favorite Nolan films in general. It definitely is like in my top 3 for sure.
Yeah.
What about you?
I did love this movie. I got a comment immediately on my Letterboxd review, 4 stars only. People sometimes drive me nuts on Letterboxd. Like, that's a high score.
You rated it really high? Really?
Dick. I do think there's a lot of flaws with this movie, which we'll get into. And I might be wrong. I might just be not understanding certain things. But also, I think that they'll disappear with successive rewatches. I won't care as much. It's not as important. You mentioned like love being a center, not only theme of this movie, but plot device. And I actually think that's one of its strengths. But I say that as a huge fan of the Wachowskis, folks who are famous for hard sci-fi that is extremely emotional and centered around things like love quite often, like a la The Matrix, Sense8, all kinds of stuff. So I like that a lot. It's really the last 15 minutes or so that drops this movie from being like a transcendent experience into a bit of an eye roll. Mm-hmm. And I think that that'll disappear with rewatches, but I feel like it overstays its welcome and kind of wraps things up a little too nicely and removes itself from me a little bit. I
would agree with that. I think you're right. It does stay a little bit over past its welcome.
Because like there's this truly transcendent moment that I think operates as a Shyamalan twist, but also more than that. I also was a father the first time I saw this, but barely. A very new father who's very immature and still processing things.
Did this hit way different now that you've had some time being a father?
I cried at least 4 times, hard. Not like, not like, oh, there's a tear, I think, welling up, but like racking sobs 4 times. I think Hans Zimmer's score
it's amazing.
Pulls the most weight in that regard.
Yeah.
It's fucking, he always partners with Nolan and does a great job, but this is,
I think this is my favorite Zimmer Nolan collaboration score.
So.
It was nominated for an Oscar that year. It didn't win, which I was actually surprised. I was like, who won that year? Because this is an amazing score. Oh, it was the Grand Budapest Hotel score. That's a pretty banger score too. Okay, I get that.
It's just a strong year.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is later in Nolan's filmography. You mentioned earlier, I mean, he started with his first debut feature was Following, which is kind of a student film. And then Memento, of course. He does Insomnia, then starts with Batman, does my favorite Nolan film, The Prestige.
Prestige is my favorite as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Then The Dark Knight, of course, Inception, Dark Knight Rises, and then Interstellar. And then Dunkirk, Tenet, and Oppenheimer. So that's where we're at, smack dab toward the high middle. Also, I had a daughter watching it this time specifically, and I'm much closer to death than I was the first time I watched it.
1 foot in the grave, 1 foot on a banana peel. That's Get Laser.
And I've always been an enemy of time, and so this movie should hit even harder than it does. Honestly, I wonder how much of that is just.
When your daughter toddles away, like if you're in the living room and she toddles into the kitchen, you're like, "Don't leave me, Murph."
No. Kind of. I do think there's this acknowledgement in this movie of like your kids being the most important thing, but at the same time, like there's shit you got to do, and it's just unfortunate that there's shit I got to do for her to have a life. I have to be away from her in certain aspects to. Not just to put the food on the table, but all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
To show her what it's like to live your own life. Because my parents were, my mom specifically was obsessed with her kids to our detriment. Like she never shown us an example of living her own life. She never had any hobbies. She never went out with friends. She never did anything. And so by the time I was a teenager, it was just kind of weird and sad. So even though I was really little, she was devoted and wonderful, always there. Grateful for that. But you know what I mean? Like she was never like, I'm going out with Caroline or anything, It's like, there was no Caroline. She just
Caroline
sat there chain smoking cigarettes, wondering what I was doing. And I'm like, I'm out with friends, Anyway. So I love that aspect of it too. And there's that line, some stuff I caught this time where he tells Murph, when you're a parent, you become the ghost of your kid's future.
Yeah. It's a great line.
When he is literally the ghost of her future at that moment.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is really neat. I love it. I love the stuff that Jonathan Nolan and Chris Nolan do together as writers. But we'll get into it as far as the problems I think it may or may not have.
And the cast is amazing. We haven't really touched on like Matthew McConaughey, maybe one of his best roles of all time. This is like during peak McConaissance.
I was going to say it's worth mentioning what was happening at this time with Matthew McConaughey, a guy who was typecast in romantic comedies, was turning down romantic comedy scripts. And they told him, you stop doing this. You may never work again. They offered him $20 million for a role in a rom-com. Because at the time he was doing like Fool's Gold and
Failure to
How to
Lodge.
Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Nothing but that. And he really wasn't validated as an actor.
There's even I forget what movie it was, but even Nolan's like, I don't want to have McConaughey in this movie. He's not, and he saw, I forget what movie it was, but he saw McConaughey in something. It was like, oh, actually, he's great. I need him in this.
It might have been Killer Joe, because he does Ghosts of Girlfriends Past in 2009.
Oof.
And that's when he takes 2 years off. He's like, I'm not taking another role. Because he did 3 movies in 2008, one of which was Tropic Thunder. That one's fire. And then he comes back with the Lincoln Lawyer, Bernie, and Killer Joe. Like these tiny movies. Killer Joe specifically is a William Friedkin fucking weird ass movie that I love. And that's probably what he saw was Killer Joe. And then he does Mud, which is a great movie.
Oh, it was Mud.
Mud?
Yeah, it was Mud. You saying that reminded me of that. Yep.
He does Mud in 2012. Then Magic Mike, And then Dallas Buyers Club.
Ooh, yeah.
Where he wins an Oscar. The Wolf of Wall Street, where he's recovering from the severe weight loss of Dallas Buyers Club, and he looks the way he does in Wolf of Wall Street. And then True Detective season 1, which is, everybody's like, who the fuck is this guy? You know, which is weird because I didn't see the reconnaissance as happening the way that it was, the way everybody else did, because I grew up on A Time to Kill. Matthew McConaughey, that's just who I thought he was. I was like, this guy's always been a great actor, right? I liked rom-coms.
I was always kind of in the same boat too. Like, McConaughey's awesome. He just needed a chance. Let the man off the leash.
He did a really brave thing. Studios were telling him, you're fucking up. You're never going to be who you think you are. We're never giving you this artsy stuff. And True Detective was when it was like, all right, he's off the leash. Like, this guy's amazing, right? And then Interstellar is right after True Detective. So this is as you said, the apex of the reconnaissance. He really hasn't done, ironically, as also the end of the reconnaissance. He hasn't done anything since then. He's great in The Gentleman. I never saw The Beach Bum, but he's in like The Dark Tower. He does a lot of voice work.
I forgot about Dark Tower.
I never saw Free State of Jones. I love his voice work in Kubo and the Two Strings and Sing, but I mean, that's not the same, right? And then that's it. I mean, he does a bunch of shit. What's going on right now? Where's the reconnaissance, man? But it peaked with Interstellar. That was the end. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I just wanted to walk you guys through the reconnaissance because that's an important context for when this movie's coming out. But also, legendary Ellen Burstyn from The Exorcist and many other things, Last Picture Show, all kinds of stuff. Jessica Chastain, Anne Hathaway, who had recently worked with him on Dark Knight Rises.
Yep.
John Lithgow.
Love John Lithgow. I forgot he was in this, honestly. Somebody popped up. I'm like, oh, Donald.
Timothy Chalamet was a jump scare for me.
Dude,
I don't think I knew who he was when the first time I watched this.
No, I didn't know who he was.
So I was like,
this.
What?
But then when what do you think? Like 14-year-old Timothy Chalamet comes like skulking out from around whatever corner he was at the beginning of the scene. It was like, oh.
Let me drop, Dad.
Wonka.
And then he turns into Casey Affleck, which I hope doesn't happen.
Which that's another point that I think is amazing about this movie is I remember in the lead up to this movie, it's like, who's in this? Matthew McConaughey. Anne Hathaway's in it. Michael Caine's in this, of course, because it's a Nolan film.
I totally didn't know fucking Matt Damon was in it either.
They kept Casey Affleck.
When they unzipped that bag, I was like, whoa!
Matt Damon is the biggest, for me, I think that might be the biggest, whoa, Matt Damon's in this, and this is a year before The Martian came out. It's actually funny. Yeah. It's actually funny. I was on the phone with Erica earlier this week, and she's like, "What's the Patron movie this week that you guys got to watch?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Interstellar," and she goes, "Oh, is that the one with Matt Damon in space?" And I'm like, "Ah!" And before I could answer, she goes, "Oh no, that's The Martian." I'm like, "Ah!" I mean, you're still not wrong.
Yeah, that's funny. And as well as David Oyelowo and Michael Caine, of course. It's a Nolan movie.
I lie to everyone. Wes fucking Bentley.
Oh yeah, Wes Bentley, or as I know him, the guy from Hunger Games.
Yeah. What was he? He was in something fairly recently that we covered for the show that was like a surprise Wes Bentley shock. Like jump scare. Oh, I can't remember what that. You remember what that was?
No, I don't.
But it was a thing, right? I'm not misremembering that.
We didn't cover American Beauty, did we?
No.
Irish Karen.
But yeah, Casey Affleck also. Like everyone's great in this. David Gyasi, the guy who plays Romilly. I think that guy's great. I'm very unfamiliar with his work, but
yeah, Romilly's incredible, especially that scene where they get back and it's been 20 something years.
And he's been by himself.
And he's kind of twisted and like, oh, hello.
That scene in particular is so, maybe this is kind of jumping the gun, but I love his performance because right before they leave the station to go down to the planet, he has that conversation with Cooper where he's like, it's really messing with me that there's just aluminum and plate and then nothing. And like, this is kind of freaking me out that I'm up here and like, hey man, here's some rainforest sounds to fall asleep to. See you in 23 years in your own personal hell.
Yeah. Why didn't you just go with him?
He wanted to get information on the black hole to send back to
research, but he does nothing.
Michael Caine.
He does nothing. And Michael Caine's not actually working on it.
I'm putting this on mute. I'm going to leave it on scene.
It just says the check mark and he's like, oh.
And then Young Murph is played by Mackenzie Foy. Isn't that the baby in Twilight? Or the young daughter?
Way.
Resume or whatever?
Renesmee. Not resume.
Resume.
let me find young Murph here. Mackenzie
Murph.
Foy. That's not Renesmee, is it? It does look like, now that you're saying that. Twilight Saga! It's Renesmee!
Yep.
No
Murph,
way.
Don't be a werewolf, Murph.
No, she's half vampire.
Don't be that, Murph. I've seen those movies. Just the one.
I love Twilight. All right.
Yeah, this is such a great movie. It was nominated for Best Original Score, Production Design, Sound Editing and Mixing. It did win for Best Special Effects.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, budget of $165 million. Made $731 million. Written by Jonathan and Christopher Nolan. Just, did you know, and I didn't know this, I was doing research for this movie. Did you know that this movie was originally like supposed to be made like a fucking decade before, and it was going to be Steven Spielberg? And Kip, I think his name's Kip Thorne, the astrophysicist that like works closely with them to make sure the science. He was the one that kind of, he also worked with on Contact, also a Matthew McConaughey movie.
Ooh.
And he and his partner had this idea for this movie like years prior, and Spielberg was supposed to do it, and Jonathan Nolan was always set to write it. Jonathan Nolan even went to like Caltech for 4 years to study relativity and shit to make sure like the science was right behind it. But then Spielberg obviously dipped out. I think there was a rights issue where his company went from Paramount to Disney Studios, and so he couldn't make the movie anymore because it was owned by Paramount, and there was a whole rights issue with Warner Brothers as well. But yeah, it was just this, there's actually this long storied history of how this movie eventually got made, and Nolan eventually was his brother was like, "Hey buddy, I'm writing this movie, you want to help me?" He's like, "I'm gonna write it the way I want to write it," and sort of did its own little spin on it.
It's about love.
But when you know that, when you I feel like, because this was kind of it unlocked a thing for me, where if you know that this movie was originally supposed to be a Spielberg movie, that makes so much fucking sense.
I think you would have made a very different but great version of it.
Yeah, because I mean, even the first third of this movie is basically Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Dude like finds some anomaly, gets obsessed with it. Eventually that leads him to go into space. And then also like so much of the movie is centered around the kids and the relationship with the dad. That's so Spielbergian. It's not necessarily something I attribute to Nolan per se. But
it would have been more from Murph's perspective though.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right. But that was like, that makes total sense that this has Spielberg's thumb on it somewhere.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from Nolan, because he did change the ending and stuff like that to what it is.
Oh, my favorite part.
Yeah.
No, it's a great flick. Like I said, and I don't know when I'll revisit it again, but I'm so glad that I did. And it was higher in my estimation than last time. And I think it's the type that'll continue to go up.
Yeah. It'll age like fine wine.
It will. It's a fine wine movie. But it opens with the blight and the dusty crops and like these interesting old people telling stories, which we come to find out at the end of the movie is kind of like a museum. You know, when you walk through a monument and you see those videos of the survivors playing and stuff, that's what those interviews are.
These interviews are actually taken from a Ken Burns documentary about the Dust Bowl.
The real.
And all these people are, except for Ellen Burstyn, who's the first person that shows up on screen, who's supposed to be Murph, an old Murph. They're all actual survivors of Dust Bowl talking about the Dust Bowl, which was a real life calamity that happened in the 2030s.
Great Depression era, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about John Steinbeck type shit right now, which is probably symbolism for Nolan, like maybe some like Americana kind of, I don't know, man. Like we're at the cusp of another revolution. I don't know, man. I'm sure there's something there. And he has Matthew McConaughey's character Cooper has like a nightmare of his crash. He's a pilot. That's what we know of him so far. That's a real crash that happened. He wakes up. John Lithgow is his wife's father, his wife who passed away. And he has two children, Timothée Chalamet, who plays Tom, and Murph, who is apparently Renesmee. And they're having like breakfast, talking about Murphy's ghost, you know. She's got...
I love, Nolan does this a lot where he spoils the ending to his movie like right off the jump, but it's very subtle because I think Murph's first line is like, "I thought you were my ghost," when she goes into Cooper's bedroom. Yeah. And it's like, he is. So they kind of poke fun of her. He's a man of science. He's also not, I don't want to say a good father, but he's a very busy guy. He's more concerned with things out in the world. And
John Lithgow's character has to be like, sit down, deal with this, plus you have a parent teacher conference, and he's like, listen, Murph, ghosts aren't real. Is that good? You feel better?
It has to be, you can't just be scared of it. It's got to be science. You got to read the data, analyze the data, and do experiments.
Yeah, do experiments. By the way, no better casting than Matthew McConaughey for this.
He's perfect.
This guy that's supposed to be charismatic and brilliant, but also this kind of Indiana Jones-esque sense of adventure, but also kind of like able to take in strange stimuli, new, like, we're going backwards in time now, and just be okay with it. That's who he actually is as a person.
All right.
And like, it's just perfect casting.
Also, I love the casting of John Lithgow as our aging millennial. Like, we are John Lithgow in this movie.
No.
And that's another thing I love about this movie is the world is facing this apocalypse, right? Mm-hmm. Of this blight that's like destroying every crop there is except corn. Yes. And eventually, who knows how long that's going to last? And it's it's stealing all the oxygen out of the world. But I love how, because in most movies, the apocalypse, you're either already in the apocalypse and it's like just a desert wasteland and it was nukes, or like you're in the middle of the apocalypse happening. I love how we're in the middle of this apocalypse happening, but it feels so much more terrifying and real because it's just the slow.
It's just climate stuff.
Oh, the apocalypse is going to take like 40 to 60 years to actually kill every one of us off. We're just slowly dealing with it.
Still trying to play baseball.
Yeah. With some real shitty Yankees.
Did you get the sense that a lot of other countries are gone already because of their inability agriculturally, or a lot of other places are gone because there's no war anymore, he says? Isn't that a line?
Yeah, that is a line. I don't know if they're necessarily gone, but there is this theme where the world has stopped creating things and they've put all their eggs into the propaganda of gotta be a farmer because there's such a food shortage. And they do that in subtle ways where, when they go to the school, there's
parent teacher conference,
or, obviously they're talking about being a farmer, but then like all the kids' drawings in the backgrounds are of tractors and shit. Their farm specifically, you see mountains in the background. That's usually not where you grow crops, is near mountains.
Yeah.
And, but they do mention that, India shut down their NASA program, or their version of NASA around 10 years ago.
The drone is like,
Yeah. So I don't know if they're necessarily gone, but they definitely, everyone has reprioritized their needs to, everyone's a farmer. Everyone's going to be a farmer. That's the way we keep we're a caretaker, generation. We have to keep farming. Technology's bad. We didn't go to the moon. There's all this propaganda. There's like moon deniers.
Yeah.
That is like the official thing. Like, we faked the moon landing so that the Soviets would spend all their money and go bankrupt. And that's how we defeated the Soviet Union.
We're trying to get away from the excess of the 20th century.
Yeah.
I guess my curiosity is around how many people are left in this world, because it just seems to be so focused on this one town. And it seems like Murph, when she quote unquote saves the world, all she does is takes her town with her. Because they're building what I think is a mobile space station.
Yeah.
So they're actually building as a ruse to keep people invested. So they're able to actually, in the NASA facility, just fly away in that building, essentially. That's the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
But take who? Just that town, right? Should they leave everyone else on Earth to die? Because nobody else built that building that can fly.
Well, I think it's implied through like very subtle, clues in the background, is that all of the money is going into these projects. So I think you can infer that there's multiple of these around. We're just seeing Murph's one.
Maybe.
Because even like when they're in
I think it's funnier to imagine she just took her friends.
Bye. Yeah, even the parent-teacher conference scene when he's like, well, you're not letting my kid go to college. I pay my taxes. Why can't he go to college? And they're like, your taxes aren't going to school. It's because they're all going to the space program in secret, but they can't be open and honest about that because the public opinion is very anti-space exploration. Like, why would you waste money on space when we got to grow corn?
Nobody likes space. We all love corn. It's corn.
It's got the juice.
It has the juice.
I love the small detail that everything they eat is corn.
Everything's corn.
Like they got like corn pancakes, and John Lithgow's like, I hate eating popcorn at the baseball game. I want a hot dog.
Well, what even is a hot dog? We don't know. So he goes to the parent teacher conference. On the way, he gets a flat tire. He makes Tom change it without telling him how. We got to patch the tire. I ain't always going to be here, man. Figure it out. Anyway, what's up, Murph? I love you.
I don't care about Timotei. He'll be fine.
We find out she's named after Murphy's Law because her and Tom had argued. And she's like, why'd you name me after a bad thing? He's like, it's not a bad thing. It's everything.
Whatever can happen will happen. We thought that sounded pretty cool.
Also, there's a lot of bad stuff. And then there's the big drone chase scene where he lets Tom drive while he's trying to what's the word? Commandeer the old Indian drone so he can take it apart and put it in one of his automatic combines. He almost drives right off a cliff. Well, I guess that answers the riddle on whether or not you drive off a cliff if I told you to.
That's good.
He's so chill. It's only Matthew McConaughey could pull that off without taking me out of the story. He's very trusting of his kids, you know?
They're precocious little scamps. They're both really smart.
Yes.
Murph's the
genius.
Smartest, but
she's already in
no
trouble
slouch.
at the parent-teacher conference for being too smart for her teachers, so she gets suspended.
Yeah.
Tom's scores are great, but means he'll be an excellent farmer.
There is a part later in the movie where he's like, he's like, I'm number 2 in my class. So-and-so's still giving me C's though.
Yeah.
To me, that reads as like they're purposely tanking his score. So he has to be a farmer.
Yeah.
Because that's just the world they live in. They're
For
just
sure.
purposely making, even though he could be a genius like her, he's not the number 1 person. So they're okay with.
And then eventually
taking him
he's like this abusive, resigned to his fate guy that won't even let his family.
He lost his
leave the
hope.
farm.
He lost his hope.
Because he lost his first kid dies, right?
Mm-hmm. Jesse dies, yeah, unfortunately, because he's got the blight.
Yeah, there's no military anymore. And we find out that he used to be a pilot, but he's also an engineer, which is apparently an astronaut. Well, they say pilot, but then they're like, they want him to fly the space shuttle. So it's like, so he's an astronaut? Or maybe it's so far in the future that that's what planes are like.
Well, I think most astronauts are pilots as well. They start off as piloting aircraft and then they transition into spacecraft.
I think it's vastly different though, right? Like with the no gravity and the
well, sure, you have to learn a different method, but I'm pretty sure almost all there are pilots they have to pilot the spacecraft.
But they're like astrophysicists as well.
Yes,
which is they made it sound like he was like a Top Gun guy, but he's not. He's like an astronaut guy.
Yeah, he was a test pilot.
But then there's also a scene, I'll tell you, there's a scene where they explain something to the clearly brilliant Cooper that was taught to me in the movie Event Horizon. Or I'm like,
and Stranger Things.
Come on. Yeah.
But I do like this. And this is another little hint that I think the script is so good is they're wondering why is this drone from India here? It's been flying around for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Why did it come here? It's because they're drawn to the magnetic anomalies happening on their farm.
Ooh, I didn't even.
Same with the later on when all the farm equipment drives up to the farm.
Yeah.
They're all being drawn to the magnetic gravity that's happening in their house.
Which is the result of Cooper in the black hole, right?
Yep. And then, so the drone thing, I think in the original draft of the script, that was what Spielberg would have made. The drone was going to be the answer. The drone was going to be the thing that they send the information back to, which is it's kind of weird. I don't know if I like that one.
But it also is a point now where the drone is for what purpose is the scene with the drone?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's only world building in terms of it's looking for the anomaly, but also it kind of shows how the relationship of Murph and Coop.
Yes.
Coop and Murph.
Especially the scene where she stows away in his truck is where that relationship, I think, blossoms. But we also find out in the parent-teacher conference that his ex-wife died of a brain cyst that would have been discovered had they used resources for an MRI. He's very angry about that. He gets Murph suspended. This is when we see the combines go haywire. They're all surrounding the house. Murphy's quote unquote ghost has been knocking books off the shelf. She keeps trying to figure out if it's Morse code that they're saying.
Yeah, there's a pattern to it.
And then she's like, no, there's nothing special about which book so she's treating it like science now as requested by her father. He's outside talking to Gramps about the magnets and conference results, drinking some burrs, probably corn beer.
I love the line where, because he's saying, Donald say back in my day, there were 6 billion people trying to have it all. Can you imagine that? We used to make new gadgets every other day. And then Cooper says something like, We used to look up at the sky and wonder about our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt.
He's an explorer, man.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's when John Lithgow looks at him and says, "You're the one that doesn't belong here. Your kids are fine. They fit in. You know, I don't give a fuck.
Time will be great. I'm dying.
I'm chilling. I'm
You were
drinking
born
corn beer.
40 years too early or too late.
All I need is corn and porn. You're the one that wants the stars." My next note is more old folks, and I don't. Oh, it's the interviews things again.
Yeah. More old folks.
We get the baseball game scene, the popcorn instead of the hot dogs, and then a giant dust cloud. It's kind of like a quiet place or something. You know, the alarms go off, the dust cloud comes in. We got to mask up, and then he tries to drive back to the house. The wind is crazy. They run for the house. Murph's window is open. She runs upstairs panicking. And the dust
is blowing in.
It's falling funny. The dust is falling funny. It's falling in a pattern. Damn, it's dusty outside.
It's not a ghost. It's gravity.
Yeah, he was in there all night trying to figure out what Murphy's ghost was doing because he's just sitting there still when she wakes up.
I love Donald's one line like, "Can you clean up the house when you're done praying?" and whatever that is.
Yeah, because they're just so interested in it and he doesn't care.
He doesn't give a shit.
It's not a ghost, it's gravity. And he said, it's not Morse, it's binary. Thick is 1, thin is 0. Your mother was thick. And then he realizes that it's coordinates. And that shows the place on a map nearby. That's what the coordinates point to. He tells her it's too dangerous. I don't know what's there. You got to stay here. He finds her stowed away in his truck, and he's really proud of her for that when he finds her, you know?
Yeah, he loves it. It is kind of funny. He was like, "You can't go in here." And then they cut to him like back in the house. They were outside.
Yeah.
Now he's back, and now he's like, "Murph, I'm leaving. I'll see you later."
Yeah.
All that rascal snuck in.
Yes. I don't have to be lonely. And it's not my fault.
Meant to do it. But yeah, I laughed real loud hard at the scene. So the coordinates take them to this, like, you know, it's nighttime. It's
a gated
spooky.
area.
There's a gated area. You know, Cooper kind of walks
he likes
out.
her to side.
Big like spotlight hits him, and you can hear him like, "Put your hands to the ground." There's like some sort of security guard or something, and you can hear him get tased.
Yeah.
And then the light walks over to Murph, and it's just like, "Do not be afraid." And Murph's like, "Ah!"
That's very Spielbergian as well. I felt like this whole scene is great because I like that it's kind of up to her because he doesn't like want to break the law or what he wants to. He's trying really hard to be a dad, but he goes, "Well, guess that's the end of the road, kiddo. There's a fence here, so we're not allowed to go over it." And she goes, "Didn't you bring the bolt cutters?" A sleeve, and he's like, "Fuck yeah, I did."
Yeah, boss said to bring out the bolt cutters. All right.
He said, "That's my girl," you know. But then he gets tased and taken. The "Don't be afraid" scene's hilarious. Tars is fucking hilarious.
Fucking love Tars.
This whole movie, honestly, I love me some BB-8 and R2-D2.
Oh yeah,
but I'm actually a K2SO girly. Mm-hmm. Tars is up there, dude.
Tars is great.
I mean, I
love
good.
Tars because he just sounds like a dude. It's not, "I am a robot. Please let me be a robot." It's just, "Hello, I'm Tars. I'm the robot." But he also looks like a fucking fridge that just
the whole design
wobbles around.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's very brutalist. Like it looks like the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey. But like if the monolith was like, "I'm going to run at you now."
Especially the scene on the water planet when you can see what they can do. It's like, oh,
yeah,
shit.
he's like a little pinwheel. It's so cool.
Yeah, we meet Tars. We meet Dr. Brand, Anne Hathaway, who is the daughter of Dr. Brand, Michael Caine.
Should we call her Amelia?
Sure.
Just for
people to understand better.
People when like Cooper's like, Cooper looks at Brand lovingly. It's like, thank you for looking at me like that, Cooper. I've been working out.
They meet in the conference room because he's being really stubborn about telling him any info. We see Michael Caine and Wes Bentley and all the crew who plays Doyle. He says that it was a gravitational anomaly that brought him here, and they all get really excited. And he's like, "I'm glad y'all are real fucking excited. However, where am I? You know, find out they're NASA."
This cracked me up. He's like, "Where am I?" And they're in a conference room. It's like, "Glad you asked." And they like press a button, and the back wall just opens up to a fucking rocket pad.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
We didn't know where to put the conference room.
This is where I kind of one of like a few eye rolly things, but it's fine. I can't stress that enough, guys. But we're NASA, who you used to fly for. oh, he's an astronaut. You know, like it's like that's so different to me than all right, make sure your seat tables and seat backs and tray tables. You know, it's way different. Like there's so many different tiers of pilot.
Well,
I feel like NASA pilot is so much higher.
Well, the movie opens up with him doing his failed test flight for them.
I guess maybe I wasn't paying attention to the pilot crash as much.
It fails because when he's driving, the person on the intercom is actually the voice of TARS. So in theory, like the reason he crashed is because the robot took over the flight, and that's why he crashed. That's why
he says that later.
He has that distrust of these robots when he first joins the crew, which I think is great. Anytime a movie has a character that's like, I hate robots, and then by the end of the movie they're like, you're my new son, robot. Timothée Chalamet can eat one.
Yeah, they put him back together. And
Casey Affleck can definitely eat one.
They find his old robot. They tell him, look, the corn's going to die soon too. We need to get people we need another planet, right? The last people there's so many good lines in this fucking movie, dude.
Yeah.
The last people to starve will be the first to suffocate is such a good line.
Yeah.
And then they won't tell Cooper any of their plan until he agrees to be the pilot. And they tell him they chose you, they being this fifth dimensional being that they believe is helping them out here.
And he says like the name of the mission is the Lazarus mission. And he goes like, and Matthew McConaughey is like, that doesn't sound great. And he's like, well, he's like, Lazarus came back from the dead. And he's like, well, he had to die first.
Depends on I'm a glass half empty guy.
Which is interesting because it's another hint to what's happening, because if you know that context of who Lazarus is, that's 100% Dr. Brand's plan is humanity is going to die on the planet. And the real plan is to seed these
Project Lazarus.
New people on a different, the embryos are going to create humanity on a different planet. But so like,
it's also kind of in reference, depending on what you believe happened, to Cooper.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the biggest problem with the movie.
I don't like having to die first.
Which is weird because my biggest fault with this movie is like something I would normally love. Like cake and eat it too kind of thing, you know? We'll get there. But yeah, so there's multiple gravitational anomalies, the most significant of which is by Saturn. It's a fucking wormhole. We all know what wormholes are at this point. It's a cinematic language of its own at this point.
Yeah.
They do still take pains to explain it just in case. And we find out that they have already sent people through the wormhole. There were 12 missions for 12 possibly habitable worlds, led by Dr. Mann, later played by Matt Damon.
He's a real man's man.
There's one of the systems that has 3 worlds that show promise. And the entire facility that they're in is a space station. There's a plan A where they all take, I don't know, my estimation, the town, maybe all living people on Earth, to this new planet. Plan B, they at least take embryos and just set up a colony and everybody on Earth dies.
Yeah. But the human race will survive.
He goes back to tell Murph that he has to leave for an undisclosed amount of years. She's very upset and won't even speak to him. And this is when he tells her that little speech about, because like Lith goes like, go make it right before you leave. Tom will be, and I love how they're like, fuck Tom.
Tom will be fine.
Tom will be fine. He don't even know who you are.
See you tomorrow,
he
Dad.
Fucking loves farming. Yeah. All right, son. He's so fucking dumb. But he tells her that that her mother told him when she was born that now we're just here to be memories for our kids.
You're the ghost of your children's future.
God, it's such a good line because it's an Easter egg, but it's also a beautiful line. And she deciphered the message. And it says stay. And the scene plays like she's just a kid panicking and making that up so that he won't leave. And that's how he interprets it.
Yeah.
But she, in fact, read the Morse code of the books and it does say stay because it's fucking him telling him not to leave, right?
Yeah.
Which if he didn't leave, he wouldn't be there. Anyway, timey-wimey stuff. But
timey-wimey.
It's unfortunate that you do have to leave your kids. Like I had to come here and pod, Steve. I had to.
You had to.
It's the same thing.
Hold on. I got a video message of your adult daughter right now. No. I really love the editing of this. So, you know, he's like, please don't make me leave like this, Murph. And she's just mad at him. And right as he's about to leave the room, a book falls. And, before that happens, he's trying to make her feel better. He got her a watch. He's like, time's going to move differently for me.
I might be the same age as you when I get back.
And then she's like,
that makes her more sad because she's like, wait, you're going to be gone for 20 fucking years?
You don't know how long you're going to be gone?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when she really loses it. And he leaves. says his goodbye. I do like this one little bit where Tom's like, "Can I have your truck?" He's like, "You mean your truck?" Turbo.
Even though we're many years in the future, I drive a 2012 Ford.
And Casey Affleck is still driving that 30 years later.
I know. I guess he's just fixing it up.
But the sequence of him.
That shit ain't going to last but a couple years, folks.
Especially in that dust storm.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. The scene of him driving away is so well edited together because you hear the launch countdown, and they have a camera mounted on the side of the truck, similar to how they have the cameras on the side of a rocket as it's taken off.
Yeah.
And
I didn't catch that.
There's that one little bit where he sneaks a look under the blanket to see if Murph actually did like hide away with him, and she's not there. And he's just like, "Oh my God, I'm crying." Because then she busts out of the house like, "Dad, no, wait.
This was
I want to say
time
bye."
number 1 where I was racking sobs.
Oh, they should have just given.
My daughter's only 1, but she does that. Like when I go to work and stuff, she goes, no, bye, no. And like, she doesn't understand that she just thinks in her little baby brain, like, you're choosing to leave for no fucking reason. Yeah. We were watching Elmo and playing with toys, and you're a dick and you're done playing. You want to go outside bye-byes without me. I would go outside bye-byes, and yet you're not inviting me. And this is pain. You know what I mean? And it's knowing that she doesn't understand is painful.
Yeah.
And there's a great scene later where we realize the full truth that he doesn't tell her that he's saving the world. Otherwise she wouldn't be mad. Right. And there's a reason why.
Yeah. He wants to protect her.
First rule of parenting is you don't tell them the fucking world's going to end.
Yeah. That's a great line.
Yeah. So anyway, that's so painful. We get the countdown, the launch. We get the whole great thing where Tars kicks up, where we gave him a humor setting to kind of lower our stress. And he's like, "I'll blow you out the airlock," or whatever. And it's so great because he said, "Can we have a light indicating when you're joking at least?" And he's like, "Sure."
You can see it. You can use it to find your way back after I blow you out of the airlock and the lights
and then
on.
The light just turns on. So
how about we bring that humor down to 75%?
And then his honesty setting is at 90% because we get this whole exchange with he and Amelia, and Amelia says, "Can we just like not talk right now? Your voice is kind of annoying." You know, it's some version of that. And he's like, "Damn. You're not supposed to be that." And she's like, "I'm just trying to be honest." And he's like, "Well, you're not supposed to be that honest." Tars, what's your honesty setting? 90%, because it's great for social interaction. And and he looks at her like
100% honesty is bad for diplomacy.
Yeah, and he's like, "See." And it's just a cute thing that comes. Oh God, it's so good. I think I did rate this too low at 4 stars. In fact,
but there's also another robot on board, Case,
who is nowhere near as sarcastic. Yeah. And at first he pretends to prefer Case because he's more straightforward.
There's one line that Case has. I can't remember where it's at in the movie, but at one point he's like, "Tars talks enough for the both of us."
Yeah, so, even Case is kind of sarcastic in that regard. Yeah. So they dock with the space station and start spinning to simulate gravity. Which is really neat. And then it's going to take them 2 years to travel to Saturn, which I think with our current space travel capabilities would take a lot longer.
Probably.
I think it would take a couple years to get to fucking Mars right now.
I think if you do it right, it's like 6 months, maybe. I don't know. I could be wrong.
How long would it take to get to Mars?
Let's find that out. Googs, what you saying?
What's
Googs saying?
The spacecraft departs Earth at a speed. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter. The trip to Mars will take about 7 months. You're right.
Bam.
300 million miles. You are correct. That is correct. Now I have to take my shirt off.
You just got a slingshot around the moon, baby.
That's all you got to do. Fly me to the moon.
Did Frank Sinatra just walk in?
Also, I think the Dylan Thomas quote, one of my favorite poems of all time, is the first poem that we read in like middle school that I was like, "Teacher, is this bars?" You know what I mean? Like it affected me profoundly emotionally at 11 years old. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand that words put together in a certain sequence could do this to a human being yet. Mm-hmm. And this was my first experience of that. However, they bring it back a lot, rage against the dying of the light.
I get the feeling that when Amelia reads all her messages from her dad, it's just him saying that every fucking time. And she's like, "Okay, Dad."
You know how phones used to have texts used to have email signatures?
Yeah.
Like when texting was first invented. That is totally his.
Do not go gently into that good night.
Have you been onto my MySpace? Because I love that poem I put on there.
Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage. Rage Against the Dying of the Light.
But also, this poem does
Michael Caine.
reflect. You didn't write that, Michael. No one remembers that I didn't write this.
I'm actually the author of that film, of that poem, Dylan Thomas. That's me, Michael Caine.
You can't prove it.
You can't prove it.
Well, also, we did not go to the moon.
I definitely didn't do that. I think it was Stanley Kubrick's film.
Oh, yeah, that's the
It's
theory.
a 2001 A Space Odyssey. They look the same.
This episode was sponsored by BetterHelp. Folks, it's 2024. What does everybody do in the new year? They make resolutions. They set goals. How about we don't do that? I mean, you can. It's obviously nice to have goals, but it's also a good exercise to focus on things that you like about yourself. You know, not making all those high pressure goals that you might fail at and just feel worse. You can set smaller goals. And I think therapy can be a good way to access things that you enjoy about your life and focusing on the positive, the gratitude. And BetterHelp is a good way to do that. If you've never given BetterHelp a try, it's therapy that's entirely online. You can do it all from your home and access a therapist by filling out a questionnaire. And if you end up not liking that therapist, you can switch. Again, along with the theme of this ad, no pressure whatsoever. They're not going to have their feelings hurt by it. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/streamingthings today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/streamingthings.
It's the month of February, so you know what time it is. It's time to thank our patrons. Every single one of you that helps keep the lights on at Streaming Things, thank you so much. But we want to give a special shout out to our super patrons, and here they are. Thank you to Stanton Valentino, Maddlestat, Bryce Coppin, Susie Callahan, Anthony Corona, Sunshine, Huckleberry Cauliflower, Ashley Hazen, Mike from New Hampshire, Brett X, Emily Scarano, Will Tickler, Svento 7, Jay Scramo, Bluff Pum, AK Ashley Ray, Wendy O'Laughlin, Jason Hawkins, Big Butthorn, Conrad, Kaylee Sampson, Rabid Dog in a Barbie Car, Charlie Friday, Alexis Adler, Peaches, Emmy, Haley B, Joe Velez, Michelle, John Collins, Amber McVeigh, Amanda King, Trisha Bueller, Sun Loving Mortal, Suzanne Rode, Lauren Waller, Jen Robinson, Kalisha Reeves, Aaron Armstrong, Kevin Strother, Ashley Powers, Stephen V, Casey McCain, and of course, Enza. And with that, let's get back to the show.
They decide to go to Laura Miller's planet first. There's 3 people that they're visiting: Laura Miller, Wolf Edmonds, and Dr. Man himself.
The man himself.
They're going to Laura Miller's planet first. They hope to rescue each person, but also find a livable planet. They have this philosophical discussion about whether or not nature can be evil. And we also realize that through the protagonist, Cooper, that Amelia is in love with Wolf Edmonds. And he's like, file that away for later.
Because Cooper has a lot of empathy, and he really picks up on very quickly that Amelia reacts differently whenever Wolf Edmonds' name is brought up.
Yeah.
So he thinks there's something going on.
All right. Y'all was boinking.
I'm not judging.
He leaves a message for his kids. This is the scene where Kane brings Cooper's truck back for Tom, and he decides to teach him. Would you like to learn astrophysics in the meantime? Sure,
I guess. I hate school.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on poetry by Dylan Thomas? You're going to hear it a lot.
So we cut to them. It's been a couple years, I guess, because they're by Saturn now. They're at the wormhole.
I love that shot where it's you can see Saturn in the rings and just their tiny little ship passing in front of it.
Dude, Saturn
Super
looks
cool.
fire.
Yeah.
Coop is watching his messages from his kids. Murph has refused to leave him one, but he gets one from fucking John Lithgow. And Tom, of course, has nothing better to do.
Hey, Dad, I did the farming again today.
Yeah. I got another girlfriend. And then Coop gives Romilly his earth sounds. This is the part where he's really scared because he's like, there's just fucking a couple inches of aluminum and then nothing, man.
It's death.
He's like, most yachters can't even swim. It's like us because we can't swim in space. It's a good metaphor. Here's some crickets.
I love your folksy anecdotes, Coop.
This is the dumb scene where he's like, why is the wormhole a sphere? I didn't take high school science, but I'm an astronaut. And she's like, here, I'm going to do the pen and the paper thing that everybody does.
I know the answer, but for all the people in the back that might be dumb, could you explain it in practical terms?
I don't think Doyle gets it.
Doyle turns around like, what?
just let him over here.
Yeah, let dipshit know what we're doing.
And then they go through the wormhole, and we get the first handshake with the fifth dimensional beings, like because Amelia reaches out to it.
Yeah, and that's something which is
actually Coop.
We kind of breezed over is that this wormhole that they're using to look into other galaxies and travel through was artificially placed there by some sort of gravitational fifth dimensional beings that they are interpreting as being helpful to mankind and are trying to help us save ourselves.
Yeah.
And so there's this gravitational anomaly, and Amelia reaches out, and there's this like little handshake moment. And they're like, wow, we had first contact with these fifth dimensional beings. How cool.
Yeah, it warped her fingies. I saw it. I hope you're okay. And Doyle's like, no, because he's a pussy. But Miller's planet is too close to the black hole, to Gargantuan. And so they decide that it's going to be a pickle going down there because every hour on that planet will be worth 7 years on Earth. And and
because gravity can distort time and all that stuff. It's very wild. I don't really understand
Coop
it.
would never understand it because he's dumb.
I mean, Wes Bentley don't get it. If we can just TARS, if you can tell me about it, what it is.
TARS is my dude. So he's concerned about that because he's thinking constantly of his kids. And
he needs to get back to him.
He's the only one that's ever been on one of these missions that has attachments back to Earth, except for Amelia, who has her father. They purposely picked people who didn't have any family in the original 12 astronauts.
Which proves to be their undoing, which is kind of neat.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, like they picked people who don't have empathy for others to save others. That's why they were so quick to like, well, I guess we're going with the fertilization thing.
Yeah.
When they should have had people like Cooper the whole time who would worry about saving everybody else. It's beautiful.
And her, we'll get there, but Amelia's just wanted to go see Edmonds, but that was the planet that she was right. It's like, maybe love's guiding me to the truth. He's like, probably not.
Sounds like some hippy dippy bullshit.
I think you're just horny. So yeah, we get more TARS jokes. The case is the quiet one. That's when that happens. So he comes up with a plan to spend a minimal amount of time on the Miller's planet that it only cost them the 7 years. And they're like, damn, that's actually pretty smart. But Romilly will be there for at least 7 years alone, and so he chooses to do that to keep working on the formula. So I don't know if we've talked about this, but Michael Caine's character, Dr. Brand, is supposed to be finishing the formula for gravity that will allow the fucking space station to leave Earth as a building.
Yeah. Like he's,
I promise I will figure it out while you are gone.
I've got about 19 chalkboards with digits on it. Clearly I'm working on it. You don't just fill those out in a day.
That one's a Mad Libs. But
yeah, ignore that one, and that's my takeout order.
That's Dylan Thomas's book of poetry, rewritten in chalk.
Would you like to hear it? Do not go gently into that good night. Rage.
All right, I gotta go, buddy.
I'm not finished. But yeah, so he's supposed to be like his false bill of goods is that he tells Cooper and all of them like while they're going out and finding out which planet that they can go to. That's plan B. He will, and by the time they theoretically come back from their adventure, he will have finished plan A, which is they can go to that planet. Like all of humanity can go on that planet, but obviously that's a lie.
Yeah, I can't even do math.
I've been staring at the same 19 chalkboards for 23 years, and no one's called me out on it.
This is just Dylan Thomas's poem in binary.
It took a really long time.
Would you like to hear it?
Do not go gently.
Miller's planet is just a bunch of water, man. It's just a bunch of water. And it confused me at first because it does land. I thought, I was like, does the plane float? Why'd it put the landing gear down? But it's like shallow water.
Yeah, it's like 2 feet of water.
And they go to the Miller's beacon and it's just pieces. And they're like, what the fuck? That's not good. Well, let me just walk toward the mountains then. And he's like, those aren't mountains. Those are waves. And he's like, that one's going away from us. And he's like, oh shit. And then he turns around and he's like, there's one coming to us.
Oh shit, it's real close.
So he tries to get fucking Amelia back in. She's dumb and tries to get the beacon info, even though what info do we need? This planet, not cool.
Water.
And so he's like, no, get the fuck back now. But Amelia is stuck. So they send TARS to go save her, or is it Case? I don't recall.
Case.
And Doyle's dumbass gets swept away because he gets to the door and he's
gawking.
like, which I get. I mean, I don't know how I would react in that situation.
He lets Doyle, or I'm not Doyle, I'm sorry, Case and Amelia get in. So he's worried about like his partner getting in first, but then he takes a minute to just be like, oh shit, that wave is real tall. Maybe if he didn't do that, he would have made it in.
You notice Coop manually overrode the doors. He made a executive decision that Doyle was fucked.
Yeah.
At a certain point. And then, so they all get taken by this wave, and it's a crazy scene where he has to like ride the waves in the ship. And they have to wait another hour for the engines to fully drain, which is of course another 7 years on Earth. We don't know how long they've been there already. But it cost them, according to Amelia, decades, that mistake.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck, because he's got his kids and stuff. And I love how with the time shift that I'm not really fully processing, the movie walks me through this, that Laura Miller probably just died a couple of minutes ago. That's why her stuff was right there.
Yeah, because it's a decade for them, because it's taken them a decade to get the operation underway and over there. But the way time works on this planet, on that planet's time, she literally probably landed like a couple minutes ago and got hit by that first wave that they saw in the distance leaving them.
Yeah.
This is such a neat idea for a planet. Like in this world of sci-fi where I feel like we see so many planets that look the same.
It's just a bunch of water.
It's a bunch of water, but like you can walk on it sometimes because the swell of the waves being pulled up into these giant tidal waves. You can,
but also because there's a fucking black hole right there that it's probably doing that to those waves.
The gravitational pull, is pulling the waves. Which part of me wonders, like, these are smart people. Wouldn't they like be able to look at that and just be like,
don't go there.
That's too close to the black hole. That's going to create.
Well, they say that later. But I guess based on the info of Miller's planet, but they also want to save Miller. That's part of the mission.
That's true. Yeah.
But
and then when they do finally get off of, when it, like everything drains, there's another wave coming. They like yell at each other. There's that little cutaway where they cut to a body floating on the water, and it could be Doyle, but it also could be Miller's body, which is spooky.
Yeah, super spooky. But I think it's Doyle. But he wants to go back in time. He's in the ship talking to Amelia, and he's like, well, fuck, man, I'm high too now. What if we just go back in time? And she's like, that's not a thing, dude. What are you talking about right now?
Yeah.
And then they have that conversation where, he's upset because he couldn't tell Murph. It's like, wasn't she cool with you saving the world? He's like, well, I have to make her feel safe is my primary objective.
To make your children feel safe.
And that rules out telling a 10-year-old the world's ending. I love that line. It gives me chills.
And what's really cool about this is that's exactly what her dad's doing to her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Brand is also not telling her the whole truth of the world ending.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Like, he's doing the exact same fucking thing.
Yeah, there's a line from Dr. Mann that seems, because it's coming from him, sanctimonious kind of, or something like that. I don't know what the word would be, but he says, Dr. Brand is a hero. He sacrificed his own humanity by having a lack of integrity in order to do what he thinks was right. Of course that was painful for him. I think there is some truth to that, even though it's undercut by coming from the psycho.
Yeah.
But when he's like, take off, motherfuckers. He flies away at the last second on the second wave. I think we see Doyle's body, but you're right. It could be Laura's, and it never occurred to me. When they get back to the space station, Romilly greets them, and he's been waiting 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days.
This poor fucking guy.
And he could have slept the whole time, but he's like, something felt weird about sleeping my whole life away. I didn't think you guys were ever going to come back. So they have 23 years of messages from home. And one of the most famous scenes from the movie is that shot of Matthew McConaughey weeping as he watches them. And this is racking sobs number 2.
Oh yeah. This is such a powerful scene.
Because he says, play it from the beginning.
And you see Tom grow up. Like
he turns into Casey Affleck.
Turn into Casey Affleck.
Two different light years of worldviews.
Yeah, it's like the twinkest of twinks to the most biggest Boston accent Dunkin' Donuts drinking dude ever.
Yeah, the world ground him down
to a pulp. And it's so sad because he goes from like, I met a girl, I think she's the one. Hey, you're a grandpa now. Look, this is our firstborn child.
Yeah, the baby died.
The baby's dead. So is grandpa. And you're not coming back. You're dead. I guess I have to let you go.
Yeah, fuck you.
My wife Lois says I need to forget about you. And just like every time they cut to Matthew McConaughey going, just shaking his head like, no. No.
And then when Murph finally comes on, and it's because, hey, it's my birthday. It's a special one. I'm the age that you were when you left. And you said you'd be home.
And you're not.
Be really cool if you came home now. So then we cut to Murph as an adult, Jessica Chastain.
What a great perspective shift, too.
It's so good because she like turns off the recording and then walks right over.
Yeah. And we only really see her perspective, as what she's going through is happening at the exact same time Cooper's going through something.
You're right.
Which is interesting. It's a good choice.
She's been working with Dr. Brand on the computational problem of gravity. And I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of time.
That's the biggest. Time's a real son of a bitch.
Have I ever read you this poem by Dylan Thomas?
All the time, sir.
Hello?
It's really good.
We cut back to Amelia getting a message from her father. And they realize other than the time loss, they no longer have the fuel to visit both of the remaining planets. They have to make a choice between Dr. Mann's planet and Wolf Edmonds, who sounds like a hot dude.
Since a wolf, come on.
Yeah, baby.
Wolf pack.
Shit, you call him the wolf? That's all you had to say.
Wolf, ooh.
Amelia votes Edmonds because she's in love with him, and then Coop snitches on her to Romilly. And then he's like, so I'm calling an audible. We're going to Dr. Mann's planet because he's the best of us, right? And he's saying that it's good to go there. So I think that makes the most logical sense.
She even sang Dr. Mann's praises, that saying that she's the one that said he's like, the best of us.
I see what you're saying, but I think that love potentially is guiding me toward the right answer. And he's like, I don't think so.
That's some hippy dippy bullshit.
You told me we couldn't travel through time. I'm being petty now.
But I mean, she does have some good science to back up her claim. She's like, the data looks great. Like, I think we should go here. And she ultimately is proven correct. But at the same time, they're operating on the assumption that Dr. Mann is also presenting real good data.
Oh, I just realized that because they went to Dr. Mann's planet first, Edmonds dies.
Yeah.
Like he might have been alive if they'd gone there first.
Yeah, it's real kick in the pants.
We wouldn't have the two main characters bang. So that would
gotta have that.
That's what I'm saying. This movie has its cake and eats it too. And I normally like that, but I don't know how I feel about it now. But we're almost there. So on Earth, they're losing more crops. The corn's on its way out as well. Tom, I'm going to work Nelson's farm. And his wife's like, what happened to Nelson? He's like, don't worry about it. And she tells him back on the spaceship that, hey, you want to be a fucking asshole about love and stuff? How about this? If you're wrong about Dr. Mann's planet, you're going to have to choose between seeing your children again and the future of the human race. So I hope you're as objective then. If she had hair, she would have went like that, but she doesn't. So she says that in a kind of a petty, spiteful way, but back on Earth.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong. Dr. Brand's dying.
It's Topher Grace.
It's fucking Topher Grace out of nowhere. Venom himself.
It's such a nonchalant, like, cut to hallway of medical facilities. Like, yeah, he's dying soon. Like, what? Topher Grace? When?
At least it's not Hyde. And then Dr. Brand admits on his deathbed.
It's not Hyde. Jesus Christ. That would have been a real jump scare.
Yeah, I would have turned it off. Dr. Brand is dying and says he lied to her.
Forgive me, Merv.
I hate this scene at the same time as I love it.
Forgive me.
Because it's powerful. Because he's like, hey, I lied to you. Your dad was never going to come back home. And she says, I know he's about to die. Maybe his brain wasn't all there, but she's like, did my dad know? Which could absolve her of so much pain if he just said, oh, no. And she's like, did my dad know? Did my fucking dad know? Did he leave me to die? And he says, do not go gentle. I almost threw the fucking controller at my TV.
Old age should burn and rage. I'm going to dying of the light.
So did he know?
She's like shaking.
Yeah.
Like, tell me.
It's so sad. But then he just croaks at that moment. The whole equation was a sham. And there was a scene before this where she starts to kind of look at the equation in a different light. And she's like, wait a second. Your shit's all fucked up. You can't solve it this way. And he's like, because it's hinting, it's foreshadowing that he's purposely never going to solve this equation.
Yeah. Well, anytime anyone tries to like ask more probing questions about his equation, he will either like, I'm an old man, I'm going to leave, or just
I'm sleepy.
Cooper, look at the centrifuge of the building. Like, he's just always distracting people.
Have you met Topher Grace?
Hello.
So yeah, he was trying to distract her, but he finally comes clean. There was no point for them to come back. The whole plan B is the only plan, is the reveal there.
Yeah.
So Murph sends a message that Dr. Brand died, and also that,
did you know?
did you guys know it was all a lie? Tars is watching the message, and it seems kind of sinister, like he's going to delete that portion.
Yeah, it really does.
You know?
Because they're playing with your expectation, because there's a lot of 2001: A Space Odyssey DNA in this movie.
Yeah.
So
And
you
Hal's
automatically
kind of an
assume,
asshole.
like, Hal 9000 is the villain of that movie.
Yeah.
So you just automatically assume there's going to be some sort of, humans versus machines, because that's a pretty common sci-fi trope.
Yeah.
The machines are always bad. And so that shot is very misleading. I think it's a little bit of a red herring for how the movie goes.
So they get to Dr. Mann's planet. There's a fucking frozen cloud, which is a cool touch. We get to Dr. Mann's sleepy time bed, and it's fucking Matt Damon.
It's the man of the hour himself, Dr. Mann. I wrote down a bunch of these puns, just letting you know.
He's awake. Then he starts. It's such a powerful moment because he hasn't seen a human being in, I don't know, decades, years at least.
Immediately starts crying.
He weeps. And we get to the Lazarus joke number 4, because he's kind of brought back from the dead, literally, he says.
Yep.
And there's 67 hours long days of cold and 67 far colder hours at night. It's a pleasant 80% of Earth's gravity. Whee, skipping around.
It's a real no man's land.
But on the surface, it's breathable air. I swear, that's a real thing. But man had destroyed his robot, said it got a little wonky and he needed the parts, but really he destroyed it so that they couldn't immediately see the data that would prove him lying.
Yep. Poor Kip.
And then Brand gets the message via TARS about her dead father. And then because it's Murph delivering the message, it piques Cooper's interest. So he's over there watching it as well. And then they get the rest of the message about the lies of the plan. And then Dr. Mann cuts in. Nah, that's accurate.
If you think about it, like, really, like, fuck all those people on Earth, right?
How many people did you really like?
We are the future.
Think about it. We're cool.
So let me ask you a question. When you first saw this movie and it's Matt Damon is Dr. Mann, were you immediately suspect of him, or were you just like, oh, Matt Damon, we got another person here. This is fun.
No, even my second viewing, I remembered very little of this movie other than the clips that go viral all the time. And so I actually didn't even register. I think it's perfect casting because Matt's always such a nice guy.
Yeah, he's always the quintessential hero. But like, it's so interesting because when you rewatching this movie, I remembered he was, the bad guy who turns on them. Just listening to like what he's saying when he talks about, it's like, oh yeah, this guy is like very unlikable. If you have that context. But the fact that he's Matt Damon playing this character does so much, offers so much goodwill towards that character off the jump. If
Jesus
you don't know where it's going,
it's Jason Bourne.
Oh, that was good.
This is where we get the Topher Grace jump scare, by the way, because my next note is Murph. It's Topher fucking Grace. Murph is with Topher fucking Grace. But Coop says, let me go home after he finds all that out. He's like, all right, if we're fucked, I just want to go die with my kids. And Amelia's like, oh, okay. And
Dope.
Murph is with Topher Grace, and they need to get in a black hole to find the other half of the answer, which is what Romilly said. But Romilly has already said there's no way to see inside there. I looked; it's really fucking black. Yeah. And everyone in town is leaving, but to go nowhere. It's just their instinct to move out because it's getting uninhabitable there. And this is where Murph's like, I have a feeling about my old ghost that the answer might be there. And again, this is where the movie's like, why? Okay. I know you're a genius, but that's really smart.
But I think she's smart enough to know that all these gravitational anomalies, like the gravitational
house is the
anomalies,
center of all that,
brought her to that world of secret NASA, and she never fully understood what was happening. And now that she knows that there's this big lie, she's like desperate for any sort of information. Like, well, let's go back to where all this started. Maybe the home,
my room,
will provide any more gravitational clues.
She's in there playing Polly Pocket and shit. Like,
I remember doing this in the Polly Pocket. Here are my pound puppies.
She's not British. Here's my old Tamagotchi. And then they just die. Rom, back up in space, tells Coop to, on his way home, go buy Gargantuan. You might be able to drop TARS off into the black hole and who can send data that we might need to get to still save the humans.
And TARS is a bro. He's like, Send me in that black hole, baby.
Yeah.
I got nothing to live for. I'm a robot.
Yeah, he's a robot. He has to do it, right? He's correct. And goes, so then, but first, for some reason, he goes out with Dr. Mann to help like secure the modules and set up base camp and stuff. He's like, I'll help before I roll out. Make sure you get your long range transmitter. That's not a Chekhov's transmitter at all.
Could you say at this point he's Mann's best friend?
Oh, Murphy is, did you write that down?
Dude, I have like 15 of these.
Man of the hour. I get it. A lot of man puns. Murphy is back in her room. We cut between the two a lot, like you said earlier. Rom and Tars are at the broken robot. They want to salvage that as best they can. We get the survival instinct speech where he starts to become like a fucking madman.
Mm-hmm. The mad preacher. Mad
I
man.
did one for you, Steve.
I'm so proud of you. He's a true man of the cloth in that moment.
And Tom's family's lungs are too bad for them to stay. I guess Topher Grace is a doctor, but he's like an abusive alcoholic father and won't let them leave. So he punches the shit out of Topher Grace.
Well, there's this insinuation that a lot of the townspeople, their farms don't work. The blight has taken over. The dust is too bad for the people. So they're all leaving their homes to live underground. Mm-hmm. Like that's the only safe place to live.
Oh, you want me to live in your hoity-toity NASA hole? Yes.
Your nass hole?
By the way, during all this tension with the punching, Mann pushes Coop into the abyss.
He says, every man for himself.
After ripping off the transmitter. Do you see your kids as you're dying? Scientifically, I want to know.
He definitely isn't a man of few words in this
he's not.
moment because the dude loves to hear the sound of his own fucking voice. He loves to talk. What I do like about this performance is like you can tell that Dr. Mann as a character, you know, because he says like I resisted the urge to do this for a long time and I was weak and I put up the all clear. And you can tell that he's almost been like like looking in the mirror and reciting the speech that he's given.
Well, he's
Cooper.
gone completely insane.
And even like I thought I could watch you die, but I can't. I'm too weak. I'm
Turned
sorry.
off his transmitter so he doesn't have to hear his struggles.
And he says something really, and this is so indicative of how what a prick, what main character Weasley energy this character has. Is he says like few men have been tested. Don't judge me, Cooper. No one has been tested like I have. Few men have been tested as I have. Fucking Romilly also lived by himself for 20 something years, and he's
not all there anymore.
He's not all there anymore, but he's not a psychopath.
Yeah, he's still cool. He hit the crickets though.
That's true. Maybe if somebody left Dr. Mann with Sounds of the Rainforest, he'd be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that line. Know, Cooper's like, you fucking coward. And that's when he's like, hey man, don't judge me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they astronaut wrestle. And I love the astronaut wrestle. Cause you know, it's kind of lame cause they're in the suits. So they're like, but they have like the arm squirts.
The armpit jets.
That's really cool. I like the way that they use that.
Would you say they're a man of means?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But I love the line where he's headbutting his face mask to break it so he suffocates. And he's like, look, man, you got a 50-50 chance of killing yourself. It's a fucking great line, though, because Mann says, those are the best odds I've had in years. You know?
That delivery actually, I love it. I love it so much. I do unintentionally laugh at it every time because the way he says it is almost like he's Will Ferrell in a Step Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Those are the best odds I've had in years.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The clown has no penis. You're feeling your survival instinct kick in, like all that madness creeps back into the crescendo.
I'm going to save all of us for you, Cooper.
Yeah.
What a prick. He's such a dick.
Coop's able to call Brand. He finds the transmitter that Mann threw, or call Amelia rather. And back at the house, Murph starts burning the corn to set a decoy to lure Tom out so she can go get the family to safety. And he is seeing Murph as he dies. So the science was correct about that. Amelia shows up to give him air. And then he gets rescued by Tars and the gang. Back on Earth, Tom sees the corn burning and runs out there as planned. Rom is getting into the whack computer and starting seeing that the data is faked by Dr. Mann. And right as I guess he had like a failsafe in the computer, like it was booby trapped.
Yeah.
Because it blows up as soon as he is about to see the data.
There's apparently, I didn't have time to find it, but apparently there's a prequel comic book that you can find that is Dr. Man and Kip, his robot. And you can, because I think when he powers up Kip for the first time, you can hear either Matt Damon or the robot say like, please don't make me do this. Like, and that's the first thing that's what you hear when he boots up the computer right before it blows up. And that's like the last line of the comic book.
Interesting.
Or something like that. Yeah. I meant to look that up, but I didn't have time.
But then Man steals the Ranger when he sees Rom blow up. And
one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Would he maroon us? He is marooning us.
Yeah.
That's what Coop says. But Murph's stealing Tom's family. She goes to visit her. she goes to visit her old room. And Tars has disabled the docking mechanism, the auto docking mechanisms. And I love that joke where Coop says, what's your trust setting? Because he had done that in advance, you know, and Tars said lower than yours, apparently. And I fucking love that. Like, that's so clever.
Another clever thing about this relationship between like specifically Cooper, Tars, and Case is in the beginning of the movie, the robots, I don't know if they meant to do this, but they kind of insinuate that the robots sort of replace Tom as the son to Cooper. Because in the beginning of the movie, when Tom is driving the truck, he's like, slow down, Turbo. And then he calls both of the robots Turbo by the end of the movie. Like, I think one time when Kip's flying, he calls him Turbo. And then later on when I think Tars goes into the black hole, he's like, good luck, Turbo.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a funny, like, you're my real sons.
Yeah. But also the Lithgow character too, because they're sitting on the porch drinking beers together at the end, him and Tars.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So he kind of both a surrogate father figure and son.
You can have your cake and eat it too when you're a robot.
That's right. That's right. Murph's going through her old stuff. Man is attempting to dock. There's imperfect contact. And
how cool is this scene?
It's so tense because it's his arrogance that undoes him. You know, his panic and his arrogance that undoes him. They're begging him not to because it destroys their ship. Look, man, we'll work it out. Look, we're really mad at you. Sure. However,
you're going to blow out the airlock. It's bad.
You can hang out on the other side of it. Maybe we'll just give you your own room. We won't talk to you. But he's like, you guys are going to, and then just explodes.
I love how they don't even give him a chance to do his heroic, like, hold the line speech because he's so high on his own supply. Yeah. And so fake. And he starts to go on this noble
monologue
speech, and then he just gets blown out the airlock. It's so good.
And then there's a split second of thought, and Cooper's like, because it starts spinning like crazy from the
oh man,
what's the word?
Centrifugal force?
No. It's like there's the kinetic energy of the explosion is like rocked it into spinning.
And it's falling into the atmosphere. And
Coop's like,
doesn't have a
fuck it. And they're like, it's literally not physically possible for you to dock. And he's like, I'm going to fucking dock that bitch.
Oh. he has a kind of a cheesy.
It's not possible. It's necessary.
It's necessary, which it works. But this scene works so good because the tension's ramped up. The Hans Zimmer score is just serving.
You can tell how hyped I am by the score and the tension because my notes are Tars locks that shit up in all caps. I'm just so hyped.
And you can tell that the robots are his children because earlier in the movie when he does like a sick landing on Miller's planet, the one I think a Case is like, you know, you're going to have to slow down. And he goes like, caution will get you killed, Case. Mm-hmm. And then in this scene, when they're ramping into the high speed, Case goes, this is no time for caution, Coop. Yeah. Like throw it to the wind. Let's go, buddy. Balls to the wall.
Yeah, don't be a bitch now. I'm a robot. I don't actually care if I die.
I'm okay with it.
But then they're actually, after they do dock successfully, they're heading into Gargantuan's pull. So how are they going to get out of here? He decides they have a plan to slingshot to Edmund's planet. But it involves dropping Tars into the black hole, which was the plan anyway. Because she's like, we can't do that to Tars. Tars is my dude. And he's like, I'm a robot.
Okay, I literally have to do what you tell me.
But then there's a cool line. The only way human beings have ever figured out to get anywhere is to leave something behind, which is what gave me chills. Because, you know, there's a sacrifice. Every time you get a promotion at work, you're sacrificing time from your family, or you move to another city, you're leaving friends behind. And it's
great line.
It's deep, man. It's got me in the feels.
Great line.
And then
and real quick, we haven't mentioned this, but I do think it's cool how the production design of the Endurance, their like mothership, is a clock. because it's 12 pods in a circle.
I didn't even think about that.
Isn't that neat? That's such a
and it's
good,
spinning
clever
like
idea.
a clock. So the time is the whole. And the scores. One of the main song theme is called Time.
Yep. And we didn't even talk about like the most genius thing about the music on Miller's Planet specifically is the ticking in the score.
Yeah, well, every film bro knows every bit of trivia from this movie, but some of our listeners aren't film bros.
That's true.
The score, the ticks on that planet, every tick.
It's 60. It's a 60 beat per sec or per
equals
minute.
1 day on Earth, I think, a whole day. And so it's every second is like a tick, 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 and that's how much time is going by.
Yeah.
Also, the cornfield. People that are film bros are cringing, and they've heard this a million times.
I know.
The cornfield. At the beginning of the movie, Christopher Nolan actually planted that cornfield and grew it. It is real corn. It wasn't like a farm that he bought or rented. It was just they bought an empty field and planted the corn. And then at the end of the movie, he sold all that corn for a massive profit and made like a couple $100,000 on it. So I didn't learn the actual figures because it's kind of it's the equivalent of, did you know that
George Clooney went to NKU?
well, maybe locally. I think it's the equivalent of Viggo Mortensen broke his toe and he kicked that helmet.
Oh yeah.
It's just like, oh really? Everybody knows it, right? But
do not go gentle in that good night.
Using the slingshot maneuver is going to cost them 51 years.
Yeah.
So his whole
What's
family.
A few more?
Yeah. Fuck it, man. And then, oh my God, this is one of the final times of racking sobs. But Amelia's so grateful. They drop Tars off in the black hole.
And Tars.
He's in the other spaceship, the other Ranger. And then she hears the notification from Case or something, I think, that Cooper is detaching, right? And she's like, wait, what? You didn't tell me, something like that. And he looks at her and 90% honesty. And I was, fuck, what a good callback. Sorry, I got to stop myself from crying throughout talking about this movie.
If I can make you laugh in this, I was also weeping. But if you look in the screens when you're looking at the two different pods that Cooper and Tars are in, Tars got one final joke in before they sent him into the black hole, and the name of their two shuttles are LMAO1 and LMAO2.
Really?
Yeah. It's like LA-MO1. Yeah.
Did he name them that? LA-MO?
Oh yeah. I think it's Tars who's in charge of setting that up. But yeah.
Left my ass off 1 and 2. That's funny. Coop ejects. First he goes through the black hole and he's like, scientifically, in case anybody's listening, reporting on what he sees. It's really dark. It's holy and black in here. Because there's not much to say.
Flashes of light and darkness.
Yeah. Computers are kind of walking out. I just beat my top score on Galaga. Shouldn't have said that.
I'm getting updates from the Weather Bug app somehow.
Mark Zuckerberg's in here.
Holy shit, Elon Musk bought Twitter. Just on his phone.
That doesn't make any sense.
Why would he do that? Ain't that the Tesla guy?
He's on the he's going through the black hole and he's in pain physically. He starts to freak out. And at some point his ship tells him to eject. Imagine that. Like
ejecting into space.
Yeah. Into a black hole. Just like, it's scary as fuck.
I'm dead because you assume you're just going to be ripped apart by gravity.
I guess. And then, I mean, he should have already been like a crushed can.
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So he ejects and all of a sudden he's not dead. He's in this weird dimension and he realizes he's on the back of Murphy's bookshelf. And it's in real time on Earth. Murphy picks up like her old toy that fell off when she was a little girl. And he can see through the shelf and see that toy when she's a little. So it's cool. Like the editing's really well done. And he realizes the whole thing where he did say stay because he types stay in Morse code.
Murph.
No.
No.
And at the same time, old Murph is realizing that.
Weeping. I'm weeping throughout this whole thing.
You were my ghost. And then parents are just the ghosts of their children's future. Yeah, this is a 4.5 star movie. Easy, dude.
Yeah, right. But so the other twist is that Tars is also in the black hole, still reading all of the.
Hello, Cooper.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, I'm here too somewhere. But he's reading all the information that they need to get to Murph, and so they realize that
I've got it all. I just know way to talk to her. Oh, this is a doozy, Coop. Did you know Elon Musk bought Twitter?
Yeah, Tars, I heard it too on my way in. That's wild, man.
Donald Trump is elected president in a couple of years.
You're shitting me.
The guy from Home Alone?
Home Alone 2?
Oh my God.
But yeah, so they find themselves in some sort of like tesseract which is just a cube in 4-dimensional space. I think that's the definition
It's
of a
the
tesseract.
thing in Avengers, yeah.
Yeah, it powers the Heartstone or the Soul Stone, whatever the fuck. But these 5th dimensional beings that have been trying to help humanity throughout this whole time have constructed this tesseract specifically for Cooper to communicate the equation that Murph needs to save humanity.
They constructed this for me.
But really, they chose her. And this whole time he thought they chose him to go on this mission. They actually chose her to solve the equation. He's just the one that's going to give her the answer that she needs in order to save humanity.
Yeah, so gravity can cross dimensions, even time. That's the only way. That's the way they can communicate.
But
He's like, Tars, I'm the one that sent. I sent myself here. That's the whole realization, right?
And what also can travel between time and space other than gravity? Love. And the one thing that these 5th dimensional beings could not figure out is the uncomputable power of love. Like Cooper has to find the exact point in time to give this message to her.
But there are no 5th dimensional beings.
It's us.
It's them.
It's us.
That's
It's
the thing
people.
where the movie's like, so they evolve at some point. Is the movie saying that millennia, millions of millennia in the future humans are the ones that made sure that this happened so that they could exist or something, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Because the one sent the message is him, and the one that, I don't know, man.
I was listening to this thing from Neil deGrasse Tyson because, of course,
Why not?
And like he said something in this really interesting way where like we as humans can perceive space, but we can also perceive time.
Even though they're the same thing, space-time.
Well, he was saying like, so the interesting thing between the two is we can move around in space. We can walk forward, we can walk backwards, side to side, but we are shackled to time. We can perceive it, but we can't move within it. We're locked in to the present. And I just love thinking about stuff like that. It's so neat. And, you know, here it is, like apparently humanity has evolved into these 5th dimensional beings. We can do time, space.
Yeah, he's moving around in this area that they've constructed for him to be able to perceive it that way.
Yeah.
Through all these different eras of time, the way that quote unquote they can, you know?
Yeah.
But the way it was explained to me is that space and time are the same thing. It's called space-time. And what gravity is, if you picture space-time as a blanket, gravity is like a bowling ball set on the blanket, which is why it sinks, obviously, which is why things are drawn toward gravity in that way. And I think that that's really neat. But I love this moment because you've got Matthew McConaughey and his specific brand of charisma floating in this interdimensional space.
Bookshelf.
Frantically figuring this out. And then you have Tars like, so your plan is for me to send this data to a fucking little girl
In Morse code.
and that's going to solve and to a child, not just any child, you know, it's like, because she's a genius, but he also means like, it's my kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a really good movie.
It's just a good movie. Yeah, it's so, and I did see a fan theory that I thought was cool where Tars is in there at the same time as Matthew McConaughey, and Matthew McConaughey's descendants and humanity's descendants are sending this message to him from the future, but also Tars's descendants. So there's like maybe this, you know, humanity and machines have worked together to achieve cross-dimensional perception. I just thought that was cool. Like, yay, Tars is his son.
You really want Tars to be his son.
I want Tars to be his boy.
So they decide to code all of this massive amount of quantum data into the watch in Morse code by the way that the second hand ticks, like between dashes and dots, right?
So it would take a long time.
Tars does that by like,
I think he's telling Matthew
McConaughey that
what to do.
Who's tapping the fabric of time.
Yeah, the gravity strand or whatever that he's popping around with.
Yeah, to manipulate the watch hand. So Murph notices that when she grabs the watch, right? And then she runs out and tells Tom, who's super mad that they tricked him. And he's like, Dad's going to save us. I got a watch. And I love how he's just like,
what the fuck?
a farm. I know you farm corn. I know you corn, but now you know corn no more. And she has to talk to Tom that way.
Do not go quietly into that good night.
So she solves it, kisses Topher Grace, Eureka, which is apparently like a scientist thing.
It's tradition.
The bulk beings are closing the Tesseract. And he's like, they're us, dude. I love that panic as the reality closes around him. And what happens now? And it goes white. Because that's what we know of death is nothing, right? What happens now? Right before that moment.
And it turns out like he's
the one that shook her hand, through that dimension.
Yeah, it was him all along. It was Cooper all along.
At this point, I don't know what happens. And this is where the movie is either a perfect movie and I don't get it yet, or it wants its cake and eats it too and stays over too long, which is my initial reflex reaction. But Cooper wakes up in a hospital bed in the future. He's 124 years old. They found him floating in space.
Well, they spit him out where the original wormhole was by Saturn, and that's where their space station is by Saturn at this point in time.
And they're like, oh shit, that's Cooper.
It kind of leans into the is that Cooper?
And his robot that he loves.
His son robot.
And then him and the hot chick who's also a main character can fuck. Yay! And it's like the movie is like, okay.
Let people fuck on Wolf Edmund's body.
But the only thing we don't get is the reunion of Amelia and Cooper.
Yeah.
Which is like, I know I'm criticizing the movie for giving me too much. There's a reunion between Murph and Cooper. Cooper gets to still be young and live a full life with a new planet. Amelia's fine. And we can assume that they get together and get married. Cooper now has like this big ass Cooper family because
all the embryos.
No. Because Murph had an entire giant family.
Humanity
but we don't
is propagating
get to see
again.
Amelia see Cooper. And it's like, you gave us everything else. At this point, it's a Disney movie. Fuck it. Let me see it.
Well,
Quack.
I'm okay with not seeing it because to me, the emotional core of the movie is Murph and Cooper.
Father-daughter.
And that's the reunion. If you have that reunion, nothing you do after that, like him being reunited with Amelia isn't going to be nearly as cool as that or emotional. So I think it's better to end on the, we don't know what the future holds anymore and mentality, but like, we know they're there. We can assume they find each other and they start the colony and then 30 years as a thriving humanity on a different planet.
Yeah.
But I do kind of like that they end it in this way where we get that catharsis with him meeting Murph. And then you just can.
And the space station's crazy because there's like buildings above buildings and like Inception looking thing because they've solved gravity. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
there's that shot where that they're playing baseball and the ball like goes up and breaks a window that's above them because that's how the
and they're like, woo!
Is. Yeah, home run! Damn kids.
The whole space station is named not after him but his daughter, Cooper Station.
Asked of you to name it after.
There's other stations too because she has to travel there too because she heard they found him. She's so old now.
This is Murph Cooper we're talking about.
They built a replica of his old farmhouse, which is just a monument. And that's where all of the old folks that we've seen talking are just at this monument on TVs.
That's that documentary footage coming back.
Yeah.
He rebuilds TARS.
He does.
95% honesty, 75% humor.
Gets his buddy back. You want to try us 55? Auto self-destruct in 10, 9. I love that joke. She confirmed how much you loved farming, which was that she was trolling him. But he gets to see his now ancient daughter and then goes to bang Dr. Brandt on Edmund's planet.
What did you think about the reunion between the two?
I thought it was beautiful.
I love his opening line of like he holds her hand. He's like, you told them I love farming.
Yeah.
And just that little laugh that it's played so well by Ellen Burstyn. She's that little like cute little like, ooh, I got you one last time.
I knew that was going to be fucking funny.
Isn't that so funny?
Even though, how did she know she was going to see him again?
There is one nice touch when he goes into his pre-built home for the first time. And there's that dude's like, I wrote a paper on you and we built it exactly how you had it. And he goes over and he goes to like wipe dirt, like dust off the table, but there's none because it's pristine. And he says something like, I'm so tired of pretending that we went back to the way things were. I want to see where we are, where we're going.
Where they been? Yeah, I'm not too much for this pretending things are right where we started.
I don't want to go gently into that good night.
I don't want to rage against the dying of the light.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, he steals a ship to theoretically go find Brand in a strange galaxy.
That's right.
Under the light of our new sun.
Warner Brothers, give us the sequel.
What's the sequel?
It's just an erotic thriller on Edmund's planet.
I almost said a really dumb joke.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for abstaining. But God, what a good movie. I mean, it's rare that talking through it makes me realize how much I love it more. But I think that's what has just occurred. Yeah. So I appreciate you all for witnessing this. What a good goddamn movie.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike, you're the man. We appreciate you. And look forward to all the stuff. If you don't listen to our Lost coverage, you don't know that next week we're doing 3 movies. Tenet, which is very much in line with this one.
Yeah.
Action USA, as well as Kung Pao.
Enter the Fist.
With a very special guest, as far as I know. I know for sure that he's special. I just meant I think he's going to be able to have the time. A very good friend of mine. And we're doing a Star Wars marathon, all 11 of the Star Wars movies very soon. We're starting that the week after that and knocking through the rest of the Patreon demanded movies. Movies like Starship Troopers, Moneyball, Amadeus. Look forward to those. We're going to South by Southwest in March with tons of great coverage of that. And then we're starting Fallout in April on Prime Video when that comes out, the show based on the video game. A bunch of good stuff coming for the rest of the year. So thank you for supporting the show. Look forward to a really cool year on streaming things. That's all the time we have for right now. My name is Kit.
And I'm Steve.
And we have to go return some videotapes, but do not go gentle into that good night. Happy streaming.
Happy streaming. Michael Caine here. I think you should download and subscribe this podcast.
I lied to you.
It was a bad podcast. I lied. We were never meant to subscribe.
We were never meant to subscribe.
Or like.